perfectionism separates us from the truth that we're all one, the truth that we're all love, the truth that we have to prove and perform, the truth of who we really are, the truth of like
our equality,
what wants to bubble up
yes.
through us as like creation. Like perfectionism is just a block to truth.
It absolutely is, because I mean,
and
you
that
think
block
about
is the boundary that you're talking
what's
about.
the definition of perfection?
There
Based on
isn't one.
who?
There
It
isn't
is.
one.
It is a subjective.
It's
construct.
a never-ending.
So, like
yeah.
that in itself isn't even true. Like
Right.
the thought of that isn't even true.
Right.
And so, yeah, it blocks us from truth. It blocks us from.
Hey, I'm Brooke Jean, therapist, recovering perfectionist, and struggling working mom on a mission to normalize normal. If you're an overwhelmed, high-achieving, and secretly anxious mama, struggling to balance it all and on the brink of burnout, you are in the right place. Here is where we talk about hard things like balancing work and family life, mental health, and how to navigate life-altering transitions. Nothing is too taboo here. In my conversations, I'll teach you how to let go of who you think you're supposed to be in order to create the life you've always wanted. Get ready to embrace your messy, shed the shoulds, and find freedom through a life unperfected. This is the Unperfected Pod.
Hey mama, welcome back to the Unperfected Pod. I am so happy and grateful that you're here. Before we dive into today's gorgeous conversation with my friend Calley, I wanted to remind you that we are now running our Unstuck and Unstoppable Overcoming Perfectionism and Embracing Your True Worth program. You guys, this is a 5-module self-paced virtual program where you are going to learn, number one, what perfectionism is, how it's showing up for you, what its root causes are, which part of you has the perfectionism. Number two, you're going to learn how to break up with your perfectionistic mindsets. How many of you feel like you're caged in your own mind with overthinking and your inner critic? I'm going to give you real neuroscience and psychology-backed tools to help you break free from that mindset. Number three, you're going to learn how to actually develop real self-compassion and emotional resilience. This is about reframing and rebranding failure and treating yourself kindly when you're on the struggle bus. This is about feeling your feelings so you can increase your window of tolerance. Number four, creating a balanced and fulfilled life. This is where I teach you to truly prioritize self-care. I guide you how to write out your own personalized self-care routine and ritual. I teach you my favorite effective time management strategies. And I talk about boundaries and building supportive and reciprocal relationships. The fifth and final module is all about embracing your true worth and moving forward. This is where I reconnect you with your gold, the core essence of who you are, your badassery. And I give you tangible things that are going to help you become unstoppable. My loves, everything that I teach is in this program. I also jump in once a month and do a live coaching. So you get all the material and you have access forever. You get to join the community and you get coaching with me. And if you go through the Perfectionism Detox free masterclass, you get half off the program. It's $555, which you can make in 2 payments. This program will change your life. Everything I know and that has helped me let go of who I think I'm supposed to be so that I can create a life I'm actually obsessed with is in here. It's energy work. It's somatic work. It's mindset work. It's internal family systems and parts work. It's time management. It's boundaries. It's strengths based. It is just a masterpiece. And I would love to see you inside. Okay. And all the links are, of course, in the show notes. DM me on Instagram if you have any questions. All right, my loves, let's get into this week's episode. I have been having so much fun since Chloe went back to school. I'm starting to bring guests on the show. I am having goosebump worthy, life-changing, transformational conversations with powerful and incredible women. And I've got to tell you, I am turned all the way up and all the way on because of these expansive conversations that I've been privileged enough to have. And this one is no different, you guys. So This is my friend Calley Welborn. Her business is Undercurrent Enneagram. So for those of you that have been curious about the Enneagram, this episode is for you. So let me read her bio for you. As founder of Undercurrent Enneagram Consulting, Calley Welborn walks alongside you on your journey toward rediscovering your essential nature, guiding individuals and organizations through the exploration and practice of the Enneagram wisdom. She empowers fellow seekers to emerge beyond the surface and thrive in the fullness, joy, and freedom of their authentic selves. Oh my gosh, you guys. So the unperfected method is healing, becoming, and rising. And I love this conversation and the Enneagram in the becoming stage of the unperfected method. It's like underneath our roles and responsibilities, who are we really? And Calley walks us through her story and how she discovered Enneagram and how that led her to leave her corporate job to really grow in this body of work and to rediscover her soul's purpose. And she talks about how it's not just about taking a quiz and over identifying with a part. It's learning all the different types. There are 9 types, and grabbing the parts that are true to you. It's also about developing compassion for others. Like once you understand people's real motivations behind their behavior and how, guess what? It's just like us. We're actually all the same. How this can bring us closer together and deepen our connection and deepen our collaboration and just fill us with more purpose and joy and meaning and all the things that we actually seek in our lives. You do not want to miss this conversation. I hope you enjoy. Grab your notebook, baby, because there are a lot of gems in this one.
Can we just start with the
Yes.
journey we just took to get to this place
Oh
of
my.
recording?
We have arrived. We have arrived.
I wish that was part of the recording so we could normalize
Yes.
how not put together
Right.
that whole unfolding was.
Yeah, it's not just click a button and here we go. It's a whole thing.
That was
We
a
need
journey.
teammates to get
That
through
was-
it.
We had to cheerlead each other.
Yes.
Oh my God. But I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yes. Okay. So, first of all, let's clarify for the beautiful listener.
Yes.
It's an Enneagram.
Enneagram.
Does anybody care about me? Enneagram, not Enneagram.
Not Eni. It's
Eni.
pronounced Enneagram. So Ennea just means 9 in Latin.
Oh.
And gram just means drawing.
Oh.
So like, you know how octo means 8.
Yes.
So Ennea is 9 because
Oh.
it's a 9-pointed graph, which is
Wow.
the map of the Enneagram. So there you have it.
Okay. So we're already smarter because we know how to say Enneagram.
Enneagram, yes.
All right. So tell us a little bit about the Enneagram. I know it's such a multi-dimensional, we could talk for a whole series on this.
For my whole life.
For
yes.
your whole life. And it's so fascinating to me. But how did you get introduced to the Enneagram? How did you get into it? How did you realize like this is your body of work?
Yeah, this is so unexpected. I did not know this is where life was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being at church one day and I had
Mhm.
a pastor who I was very close with.
Yeah.
And she just said, "Hey, we're having this thing on Saturday. You should come." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Okay, thanks."
Mhm.
Random.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when I was traveling all the time. I was only home 1 or 2 days a week if I was lucky. I mean, I was
Oh,
just
wow.
on the road constant for 5 years. I was just traveling all the time.
So what were you doing at that point?
That
in your
was
career?
in corporate life. So
Okay.
I had a corporate career in hospitality.
Got
yeah.
it.
So mostly sales and marketing, but ran the whole gamut, HR, operations, all of it.
Okay.
And so, so I was like, oh, okay, I'll try to make it. And she like grabbed me by my shoulders and she just said, "Calley, you need to come to this."
Wow.
I mean, in my eyes.
Yeah, like your soul was called forward.
Absolutely.
Like that would be what we called an undeniable nudge from the universe.
Yes. I mean, from a loving,
Yeah,
trusted
yeah,
friend, but
yeah.
it was just like, you don't understand.
You need to
You
come.
got to be here.
Wow.
This thing was an Enneagram class. I had never heard the word Enneagram. So it wasn't even like, oh, I want to know more about this. It was just off of trust of this like loving friend.
Mm.
And I happened to be in this classroom. It was only about 20 people
Okay.
with the godmother of the Enneagram, Suzanne Stabile,
Okay.
who has been my mentor ever since. This was in 2010.
Whoa.
Yes. So this was I
Okay.
was in my I was early 30s. Maybe I was like just 30.
Mm.
Yeah. And so that's where I learned even what it was. And I heard my type, and instantly I was just like, I mean, I remember just having my head down and tears just started falling out of my eyes. But in the first two sentences, I'm like, she's talking about me. And I wouldn't lift my head up because I felt so exposed.
Oh.
And it was this weird juxtaposition of like, everything she's saying, I know, this is my life, but I've never heard this said out loud. I've never heard these words. And it was so true. And it was so eye-opening that there were definitely specific things that I thought everybody was walking around with that they are not. I'm like,
turns out that's my thing.
Yeah, that's my thing that I have put upon everybody around me, thinking, well, that's just life, or that's just how we are as humans. Nope. No.
What was that one thing? Are you comfortable sharing?
Absolutely.
I'm like, what was the thing?
It was the inner critic. So my personal type has a relentless inner critic.
Okay.
Constant, negative, horrible things you would never say out loud, you know.
Oh yeah, we all resonate. We're your people.
Absolutely.
We're your people. I call her the inner bee. She has her own everything.
Yes.
But yeah.
Which is very distinct. So I know this is about recovering perfectionists, which I am one.
Okay.
And the name kind of assigned to my type, I like the numbers more because they don't have the connotations.
Okay.
But is the perfectionist. So I mean,
are you a one?
Yeah. I lead with type 1.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna get more into it.
Yes,
but,
I really like the term reformer much better.
Yeah.
But anyway, also known as a perfectionist, but it's about that relentless inner critic.
Yeah.
And I just thought everybody was walking around with that.
Wow.
And so I would get so resentful, which is another key of us who lead with type 1.
Shoot.
I
feel called out.
Good
I feel
times.
called out.
But I'm like, how can all these people do all this stuff that looks like so fun, but it's kind of breaking the rules, but like they don't really care. And it's like, how did they have the freedom to do these things I wanted to do when that inner critic wouldn't allow me to do so? And then I would resent them for just being free.
Oh my God. No, I am like getting the goosebumps because that's so relatable.
Yeah.
That's like literally why my branding photography is me like with a cage over my head.
Yes. I love those pictures.
Because, it's like we cage ourselves in. And then the resentment of that, of like, how dare you get to live out loud? How dare you get to be happy? Even now, I see my husband sitting on the couch. I'm like, how dare you rest? And I'm like, okay, we actually need to learn from them and be inspired by them.
There's so much. And I mean, that cage, that has everything to do with the Enneagram.
Okay.
So people are like, sometimes people think, well, the Enneagram like puts me in a box. It labels me.
Yeah.
And really, it's about helping us become aware that we're already in a box. We're already in a box of our own making.
Oh.
And when we're aware of that, it's a modality of awareness. Because when we're aware of that is when we can choose to get out of that if we want to. It's a choice.
That's right.
But that's where the freedom comes in, because it's a freedom of choice.
Ooh.
You can choose to stay in that habitual pattern behavior that you're sick of.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to use all of the wisdom available to you and live in a balanced, holistic, joyful way, free.
Yeah. Free to be who you really are. And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to have this conversation with you and just to find someone who's really passionate about the Enneagram, because part of the unperfected method, it's heal, become, and rise. And I've done every personality test under the sun, but the one that really resonated with me because it felt so holistic was the Enneagram. And so I love offering any of these sorts of like wisdom-based insight tools for women to be like, well, if I'm not this,
right?
All my roles and responsibilities and protective measures and survival strategies and chosen identities. If I'm not all that, then who am I? And I feel like exploring the Enneagram is such a beautiful guide versus just starting all just out here naked and afraid willy-nilly of like, who am I? It's a framework that is so well-rounded, so beautiful to help women discover, wait, no, who am I really?
Yes. And I mean, that's exactly why I share the Enneagram is because a lot of people even think that their Enneagram type is who they are, and they identify themselves with their personality.
Yeah.
And I teach it to help people realize your type is who you are not. It's the way your particular armor looks like that you've put on to survive the environments that you grew up in, to even thrive for a long time. But for most of us, I know definitely for me, there comes a time where it no longer works.
Yeah.
It's no longer serving us.
Yes.
And we're butting up against that armor. We're stuck in that sweaty,
heavy,
weighted down,
Yeah.
and it's blocking us from everything we desire.
Yes.
And so that if we can become aware of that armor, our personality type, our Enneagram type, that's when we can start letting go of our tight grip on it. We can just start releasing, letting go, surrender is what we talk about a lot with me and my clients. So that we can incorporate the wholeness of ourselves. We've done it a certain way because it's worked for us and it's protected us, but then it gets to where it ultimately doesn't serve us.
So so is it a personality test, or is it, how would you describe what it is? Because I feel like personality test doesn't fit quite right.
No, I feel with a lot of personality tests that they are labeling and they're
it's like an
static,
assessment.
right? It's like, this is who you are. They say you're a ... right?
Yeah.
To where with the Enneagram, it's, this is a type that you lead with. We all have all of the types. We embody all of that energy.
Yeah.
There's gifts in all of that.
Yeah.
There are things to watch out for in all of that.
Yeah.
But it's about being aware of all of these different ways of seeing so we can incorporate that diversity of perspective.
Yeah.
So then we're seeing the fullness of reality. That's what it's about. Instead of seeing it just with our little lens, Ed Young calls it our bespoke sliver of reality. Instead of that limitation, we can go, ooh, there's a lot more out here that I just haven't been opened up to. And it's within us and it's in relationship.
Yeah.
Because other people, like you said, your husband's able to sit there and rest. And it's like, can't you just... Instead of wanting people to be like us or see like us, if we can expand our perspective to include the way they see, we can start to see differently. And then we can start to choose differently.
Okay.
So a lot of personality tests, it's you're a this, to where I feel like the Enneagram is, this is the type that you lead with. And here's all the reasons why. I mean, it gets very layered and deep.
Yeah.
And that's not who you are. Your essence is who you are. And so it's about peeling all that back to return, to come home to the essence of who you are.
Wow. So I feel like people love to take these kinds of things and then over-identify with their type, which I remember the first time I ever took the Enneagram, I was a 1 like you. I was a reformer. I was, the type A, overachieving, controller, perfectionist, all those things.
Stop talking about me. Just
like, we all feel called out. But I noticed, like, I took it again 5 years later after 5 years of trauma healing. And I was like, oh, I was actually leading with a 7, the enthusiast. And that the 1 was my, like, protective mechanism.
Yeah.
How I chose to show up in the world as that corporate leader. So can you talk about just like how to utilize, because I know you don't say, here's your type. You love to teach all the types.
Correct.
And have people like pick.
Self-identify.
So say more about your process with the Enneagram, because I feel like that's not what people know about the Enneagram.
Well, a little bit about what you just shared.
Yeah.
So our core type never changes.
Okay.
That's our autopilot.
Okay.
That's when we're just not thinking. We're just going. We're just in that haze, right?
Okay.
But what's lovely is that the Enneagram is dynamic. And so it tells us the moves we make when we're in health and security.
Yeah.
And the moves we make when we're in stress.
Yeah.
Both of these things are helpful for us because they balance us out.
Yes.
So it's not stress negative. It's like, here's some energy over here that's available to you that you can really use for self-care to get back to a balanced state.
Okay.
But just so happens, ones in their healthy, secure place go to 7. So when you say that happened, I'm like, of course that happened after all of that healing.
Yes.
Because 7 is the long-term healing journey for those who lead with type 1. That is
really?
the energy that they need for balance. Yes, absolutely.
I did not know that. Okay.
So that oneness doesn't ever go away. Because think about when you're feeling low,
when
I
get
feeling
triggered.
Right.
I
You
go to
right back to
1?
that autopilot. Yeah.
Oh, I definitely
Just because
do
that's
that.
the core. But there's 9 levels of development for each type. So you can be in a very healthy space of that. You can be in a pathological space of that. So it ranges. And then you've got those stress and security moves. So I just love that you say that 7 came up. And so, yes, that's why. That's actually a perfect reason to explain why I teach all of the types.
Okay.
One of the main reasons why I do this is to cultivate compassion.
Okay.
First of all, to cultivate compassion with ourselves and to say, oh, yeah, this is how I show up. And this is why. There are reasons behind all of this behavior.
Always.
So the Enneagram is not just about your behavior. It's about the motivation behind the behavior. And then when you have compassion for yourself and you see that everyone's doing the same thing just in different ways.
Yeah.
It's like different flavors. It's all ice cream and different flavors of ice cream. I wish it was that sweet all the time.
Yeah, we all just want to be loved and heard and seen and, like safe.
Right.
Like there's some basic core needs that are the motivators that we just show up in different costumes to get those core human needs met.
That's it. So we're all trying to do the same thing, but when we can see the way somebody else is trying to do what we're trying to do, it's like,
oh, just like me.
It like just, yeah. I mean, you just feel so connected with them. Then when you realize that you can use some of that energy to help balance yourself out. But if you're just focused on your one type, you can learn a lot about that, and that's already really helpful.
Yeah.
But we don't live in that silo. We have all of that energy available to us. So when we can learn about all of it is when we can incorporate that into our life and live from like a more balanced and whole way, which is why I want to teach it all. And I can never know what motivates you. Most of us don't know what motivates us. So if you take a test, it's hard to even ask questions about motivation. So I'm not big on testing or assessments for Enneagram.
Yep.
And even if we do answer them, a lot of times we're answering what we want to be, what we hope to be one day, because we don't know what motivates us, which is why I teach it the way I teach it, so that you can discover those motivations, because only you really know.
Yeah.
Behaviors can look the same, but the motivations are where you're like, oh, that's me.
Well, and do we ever fully know? Because so much of that is deep in our unconscious. Like I heard something the other day that said, we really are only privy to like 1% of reality.
I would agree with that.
And that like was like, wow.
Yeah.
So if we're living, and I don't know if this is true, like I think we're just scratching the surface of like the science and the spirituality of all of that. But it's like what that tells me, whether it's 1% or 10, is we're not living in reality. We're living in made up reality in our heads. So when I take the test, I'm very aware of like, am I choosing this because it's core to me? Or am I choosing this because it's who I want to be? Or am I choosing this because it's an adaptation? And then even if I think I know what I'm doing, it's 1% of reality.
Right. Like, am I even being honest with myself when I think I'm being honest with myself?
Exactly. Exactly. And so it sounds like this is really helpful too, in like the conscious creation of who you want to be as well. Like I might not get to the root of all my motivations, but I can understand myself. I can have some compassion, and I can consciously decide like,
yes,
I would like to handle myself in this way.
Yes. I mean, a lot of it is about awareness and just paying attention. So we focus a lot on, in my teaching, focus a lot on the centers of intelligence.
Okay.
So what is my body already telling me? What is my mind already telling me? What are my emotions already telling me? Most of us go through life leading with one of those, like taking charge for everything. And we're trying to live these balanced lives, only using one, maybe a little bit of another one.
Yeah.
But we're created to use all three equally, in equal value, equally balanced. And when we're not doing that, we're not in balance, and we're over-exhausting the one or two we are using. So we're just exhausted all the time.
Wow. So wait, so we're supposed to be using 3?
Yeah.
Will you say more about that?
Sure. So thinking and feeling and doing.
Okay.
So for example, with my type, I lead with doing. So as soon as I receive information, the way I take it in, the way I process it is I just take action. I do something about it.
Okay.
And then I have feelings about what I do. So that's where feeling comes in.
Okay.
But a lot of times it's just feelings about what I've done or haven't done, which isn't using feeling for what feeling is supposed to be used for.
Yeah, it's supposed to be informing and inspiring and creating.
Right.
Okay.
And then my particular type is thinking repressed.
Okay.
And I've denied that. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm thinking all the time. And I am. And then I remember Suzanne Stabile looked at me straight in the face and she goes, I mean thinking beyond defending against your inner critic. And I was like, oh,
what's that like? Oh,
right, because that's all I'm ever thinking about.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that's all I was ever thinking about, right?
Wow.
So it's using doing fully, using thinking fully, using feeling fully.
Yeah.
Because when you start to use the wisdom from all of that already exists, we're just not paying attention to it.
Okay.
then we can come to places from a balanced perspective, a whole perspective to make choices and choose how we want to respond with life. And so everybody has those different configurations of a dominant center of intelligence, a support center of intelligence, and a repressed center of intelligence. And healing in Enneagram looks like when you get to use all of those in a balanced, equal, fully valued way. That's when transformation starts to happen. And I mean, I've experienced it.
I was going to say, can you share more of your story? Like, let's make that like, what does that actually mean to people? Like, how did it show up? How did you figure out what your core 3 intelligence and when you started working with the balance of the 3, what became possible for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's in so many micro ways. I wish it was like this magic wand where it's like, okay, cool. And then it's totally different.
Nothing is.
And you show up totally
It's a
different.
process.
And it's not like that at all.
Yeah.
But I just remember, I mean, when I get in tailspin about things, the first thing I ask is, Calley, what do you think about this? Which sounds so silly, but it's because I'm already thinking, I'm spinning, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not thinking productively.
Oh.
And so it's like, okay, so I mean, it takes a lot of work for me. I mean, it's a very conscious, intentional decision to pause doing because I just want to take action. I just want to go. So I got to pause. I got to like sit. I got to think. I got to actually think, is that a thought of just defending against my inner critic or not? And then but then it creates this space, that pause creates this space where the efforting and the forcing and the manufacturing kind of dissolves away. And when that dissolves, I'm like, oh, those thoughts are there. They've been there. I've just been so protective over here with all this other stuff. I haven't let them get through. And that's where confidence comes from for me. That's where like when I'm sure, like when I know something, I know it in my gut. I know it in my heart. I know it in my brain without going, oh, is it the right? Is it, without the doubting. Oh man. I mean, that's the game changer. That's when I know how to move forward in my life. And then if something happens, I'm so comfortable with whatever that is because I know, I know it was the thing for me by checking in with all of those different elements. Another thing is usually I'm so doing dominant that I will overdo. And when I start spinning, like at the worst time in my life, my brother died. It was 11 years ago in July.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I am too. I miss him every day. And talk about doing. I mean, I don't even think I was breathing. I was just doing because I just couldn't manage
process
going on within me. I couldn't even like pay attention. I couldn't go there. So it was just driving myself into the ground.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is about actively surrendering what's most comfortable for us. So I have learned in my practice, in my Enneagram practice, that productive doing for me is being.
Oh, okay. Say more about that.
Yeah. Productive doing for me is actually not doing something. It's being, it's literally where I feel very close to myself, to God, is in centering prayer, where I'm sitting there for 20 minutes in silence. And every ego part of me, every personality part of me is like, what are you doing? Do you know what you can get done in 20 minutes? Calley, you don't have any time. Like, use this 20 minutes to
Yeah.
And when I say no, which takes a lot of strength for me, I'm going to just sit here and be.
Oh.
It changes every aspect of my life for that day, for that week. So this morning in my centering prayer practice, a lot of time words arise because, again, I'm not filling it with all my own stuff.
Yeah.
And the word that arose today was nothing.
Wow.
Which you would think, well, that kind of sounds like empty or sad. And for me, it was so empowering because I'm sitting here doing nothing. Right in this moment, I have nothing but myself, my breath. And I am full and I am complete and I am whole right in this moment.
Beautiful.
There is nothing else that's needed.
Yeah.
And I am of value without doing and producing, taking action. And the rest of the world just spinning around just fine without me feeling like it's all my responsibility to take care of. And just having that perspective and going into the rest of the day with that.
Oof.
Game changer.
Well, that's your power.
Yeah.
Like by quieting the mind and just being, we remember our essence and we reconnect to our power.
Yes.
And I feel like as women, we all need more of that because like we've always had it, but we've been disconnected from it.
Yes.
And it's in those moments. Also, I think it's just interesting. Like if you want to hear, you said ego and stuff, like if you want to get to know all your parts, right? Your inner child, your protectors, sit in a prayer or a meditation and observe. Oh, the critic's going to come out. The overachiever's going to come out. The child's going to throw a tantrum. The teenager's going to be like, this is dumb. And you just observe.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize like there's actually an essence that's bigger than all of that noise.
It's beyond.
That's holding it in a loving care.
Yes.
And you're like, we're okay.
Yes.
And that's where our real power is. It's in the we're okay. But I feel like this concept of being, it's real popular, but people are like, what does that actually mean? You know, like what the fuck does it mean to just be? It's just sitting with oneself, and you can do it in prayer, you can do it in nature, but it's
nature's
like
my favorite.
We're not producing, we're not executing.
Right.
We're literally being with ourselves, mind, body, and spirit, and observing in a non-judgmental, compassionate way.
Right. Our
Just
simple
breathing.
existence is enough.
Why is that so painful for women? And or how do you relate that to types? Like, is the leading one going to struggle with that more than?
Oh, I think all of us. I think all of us, absolutely, because we're all trying to. So what happens is we all have an essential nature, and each type has different essential qualities.
Okay.
All available and all accessible and all part of all of us. But some of us like have it more in spades than others, right?
Okay.
So we have this, but then this soul wound happens in our life, usually before we can even talk. I mean, our Enneagram type is pretty much solidified by the time we're 5 years old, between 3 and 5.
Yeah.
And so most of the stuff is happening before we can remember, before we can talk. And then we start building our lives around those beliefs, those childhood messages, the soul wounding that happened to us. And so instead of believing that we are connected with our essence, which we can never be separated from, and the source of that, which we can never be separated from, we start efforting and manufacturing based on, I mean, this is our personality. That's how we start building that armor to protect ourselves. So we feel like if we stop, that we're not going to be protected anymore. We feel like if we stop, that we won't know who we are. So when you say, why do we keep doing this? Why can't we just sit and be? It's because we have lost that way long time ago, but we don't talk about the stuff. So we don't know to go back to like fact check it, right? It's like, are these beliefs even true?
Yeah.
Why do
According
I
to
believe
who?
this? Yeah. Who says, right?
Yeah.
So the Enneagram helps us to go, whoa, let's pause. Let's become aware. Let's check in with this. What's true, what's not. To where it's like, oh, wow, all this is a facade. I heard it explained the other day as an avatar, and I loved that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like,
wow.
Oh, yeah, so this is how we want to be seen.
Yeah.
This is how we want to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
If we let that go, scary, then
Totally
what is
scary.
that? But if we know that all that will happen is that we return to who we essentially are in our being is where we can find rest and joy and peace. Because it never went away. It's like, you know, Wizard of Oz, right? The Dorothy, you know, she finally got home. Well, she never left home.
Yeah,
she's never been away.
Right.
Just like that's our essence.
Right.
We're never away from it. But we can come home to it anytime.
Yeah. One of the things that's coming through for me right now is just the oneness of it all. Like you're saying soul wound, and we're talking about the Enneagram, and yet it perfectly mirrors the language that I would use in psychology, that is, or even in the, you know, my faith, which is energy, which is attachment wounds.
Yes.
And I'm like, there's a reason why this is all addressing the same thing, just different language.
Yeah. Every time I hear your podcast,
so
anything you write, I'm
beautiful.
just like, this is my language.
This is it.
In Enneagram, we talk about attachment
Yeah.
being how high our trench walls are of our personality.
Oh.
So the less healthy our childhood attachment was, the deeper those trench walls are. The deeper the walls of the borders, the limitations of our personality.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, yes, it is all connected.
It's
I mean,
so
I am not
beautiful.
a therapist.
No, but you.
That's very. I mean, it's yes.
It's wild to me. It's so cool. I'm like
Yeah.
fascinated by it. I'm like,
Yeah.
we're all literally onto something here. We're just using different language, and it's beautiful because it's truth.
And this is what I love about it, is because as the Enneagram shows us, we're all different.
Yeah.
We understand things differently. We need these different languages to get to the same truth.
That's right.
Because we're different people.
That's right.
And that diversity is gorgeous.
Beautiful.
It's essential. We
Yeah.
we need it.
Yes.
But because of that, we need these different ways to get to the same things.
Yes.
So yeah, we are one. I mean, the Enneagram symbol starts with a circle, and that represents wholeness and
oneness.
And oneness. Yeah, we're all connected. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we create these structures that create division. I mean, perfectionism, like we were talking about, is a boundary creator.
Yes.
And I learned, I was preparing for one of my sessions, one of my classes, talking about type 1.
Okay.
And as I'm doing it, my 5-year-old is coming and trying to talk to me. And I'm like, I can't talk right now. And my husband's trying to talk to me. And I'm just like, y'all. And it's like, well, what can we help with? You can't help with anything. You don't understand. And I can't make you understand. And I can only do it. And I need time and I need space. Boundary, 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 boundary. Right?
Yeah.
Because I have to make it just so to try to prove my efforting that I am good.
Oh, gosh.
Instead of realizing my essence is goodness. There's nothing I can do to not be goodness. But when we forget it, that's where all that striving and efforting comes in. And that deteriorates into perfectionism for those who lead with type 1.
Wow.
And that perfectionism cuts us off from the people we love, from the things that we want, because we're so focused on, I have to do this to prove I'm worthy and good.
Oh my gosh. When you said that, when we were exchanging voice notes, you were like, perfectionism is a boundary setter. I was like, wait, what? Yeah. And then the more I'm like, oh my gosh. And the thing that I've been percolating on lately has been that perfectionism separates us from truth.
Oh, yes.
Which is basically what you're saying. Right? Like perfectionism separates us from the truth that we're all one, the truth that we're all love, the truth that we have to prove and perform, the truth of who we really are, the truth of like
our equality,
what wants to bubble up through us as like creation. Like perfectionism is just a block to truth.
It absolutely is, because I mean,
and that
think
block
about,
is the boundary that you're talking
what's
about.
the definition of perfection?
There
based on
one.
who?
There
it
isn't one.
It is a subjective.
It's
construct.
a never-ending.
So, like that in itself isn't even true. Like the thought of that isn't even true.
Right.
And so, it blocks us from truth. It blocks us from people. It blocks us from what we want in life. Because I know when I was the most perfect, work is always easier for me.
Me too.
Especially in corporate world.
Yep.
That you've got those measures, and so it's like, oh, got it, hit it, oh, and excelled, and even better than that, and
got kudos and on the promotion track.
Exactly.
And constant validation.
And thank goodness I had really great friends that I've had for a long time that stuck with me through that, and my family.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have any other relationships. There wasn't time. There wasn't space. There wasn't. It was just, I've got to put every ounce of energy and effort and time and attention into making this the absolute best.
Oh my God.
And companies love that. I mean, you get real rewarded.
It's a
and your
recipe
ego
for
gets
disaster.
real stroked.
Yeah.
But you
burn
crash
out
and burn because it's not your essence
that's right.
in there. It's all personality.
That's right.
But when we're living from our essence, when we're working from our essence, it is generative. It is life-giving.
Yes.
It can't be depleted because it is you.
Yes.
And so we got to find out what those things are for us. And each type has those essential qualities. But when we start finding out and being focused on living from there is when we're like in that flow.
Yes. Like right now, like this is work. Is this really work?
Girl.
Okay. So how can folks use the Enneagram as they're making career choices or as they're, everybody's like, what's my purpose or what's my next move?
Yeah.
How can they leverage this tool to understand maybe what that core essence and expression is?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Really it's just, I think identifying your core Enneagram type is just such a great start.
Okay.
Because that's where, to me, the healing begins.
Yeah.
I think I hear a lot of people say, I did the Enneagram, which I think that means they took a test.
That means they took a test.
Okay.
And they got the 12
Yeah,
piece
because I'm
of
like,
paper
I don't even
printout.
know what that means.
Yeah, that's all we know of it though.
Right. It's so weird. I mean, not so weird, but I think social media has, had a play in this. People are so surprised when they hear it's like this wisdom is thousands of years old.
Oh yeah, that's why
They're
I'm
"I
like,
just
it's not just a
saw it pop up."
personality test; it's like a philosophy.
It is. It's a system.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I feel like once we know our core Enneagram type is where the healing can begin, where we
Okay.
can start letting go. And when we start getting really in touch with our essence instead of our personality, then we start finding those things that enhance, feed, support that essential, authentic life. And then when we get in tune with that is where we find relationships and work and just life circumstances that connect and continue to be generative instead of depleting and exhausting. If something is depleting you and exhausting you, and I'm not saying, I mean, things are hard, things get hard.
Yeah.
But something that you're doing over and over again is constantly depleting and exhausting, it's not yours to do. It's just not yours to do.
No.
So it helps you find out what is yours to do.
Yes.
And what helps you feel alive.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I feel like part of the reason why we're not well as a society is because so many of us are doing what we think we're supposed to do or what we have to do, or you know, what our moms did or dads recommended, and we're deeply unfulfilled.
Yes.
Because we're not operating from our soul's essence, and that deep unfulfillment has a backlash on our mental, emotional, spiritual, physical well-being.
I couldn't agree more. And honestly, I feel like it has a backlash on the world.
It does.
If we were each doing what fulfilled us, what brought us life, think about the ripple effects on your family, on your community, on the organizations you work in, and on the world as a whole.
Totally.
Because that's contagious. And people are like, ooh, I want that and I want that. And the thing is that it needs all of us. We are interdependent beings. So if we were all living fully in our essence, we got it all covered.
Dude.
We don't have to try to be or do or think or feel like other people. We can be wholly us, and that makes this whole world whole.
Well, and what's wild about that too is like what we can access then from that place. Like, this is the why behind the mission of Unperfected, is like when women put their masks down and their armor down and the energy we're expending to have the perfect body and the perfect home and the blah, 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 blah. And we actually do all of this like healing, becoming. It's like what we can access in terms of like wisdom and solutions and connection and collaboration, and like we will solve fucking problems.
Absolutely.
But we're blocked and we're constipated and literally emotionally, right? Like we're constipated. And so we're not accessing what is like source or God-given wisdom.
Correct. Like we're so filled up with all the other,
Yeah.
which is why the letting go, the releasing,
The
surrender empties us out to where there is space for what already exists to just arise within us, for us to notice it.
Yes.
But it takes space.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yeah.
Again, it's not a quick fix. Nothing is.
No.
But people are just like, really? Are we just going to? And it's like, yeah.
We are just gonna.
Because you have no idea what you're going to find in there because you haven't paid any attention. And that's the thing, too. I'm like, we've done it this other way the whole time. Like, why not just try it out?
Right.
Well, we know this.
Because there's real fear that if I become me, I've just built this whole life on this false me. I'm going to lose my career, which is my identity, maybe my partner, who like what will happen as a ripple effect of me becoming me. And I think women were conditioned to nurture everyone else in the room. And so to be the one that's causing that ripple. But what I want to say about that is the right people in your life will maintain in your life. The things that go are destined to go.
Yes.
So like my corporate career left. My husband is still here.
Yes.
My children are still here. My love of dance and humor, brighter than ever.
Yes.
Like it's like the things that it's like
shiny almost.
Yeah, but
they're amplified.
Yes. Yes. And the parts that aren't destined for you are meant to fall away. And does it take courage? Yes. And should you do it anyways? Hell yes.
Absolutely. I mean, that to me, what you just described is the flow. Like people also are just like, what does flow even mean?
Yeah.
That is the flow. Instead of the efforting to make it what we think it's supposed to be, should be, ought to, supposed to. These are death.
Those are no-nos. Those are no-nos anymore.
Us recovering perfectionists, right?
Yeah.
But they've led our life for so long.
100%.
But when we get rid of that is when we get to live in the flow of what is already there for us, what the universe is bringing to us. That when you ask how my life has changed with this, that's the biggest thing. When I started letting go of all the of who I thought I was supposed to be. is when the universe is like, oh, I'm so glad. Hey, I've got the silver platter right here with all these things you never could have imagined, that you never thought of. I became a missionary and lived in Guatemala. Like,
that wasn't on your vision board.
I'm like, what? Never thought I would live in Colorado. I'm a 6th generation Texan.
Wow.
I was 40 when I had my child. So I didn't think that was going to be in the cards. I met my husband very late in life. And now we have this beautiful kindergartner. He just started last week. But it was as I continued to put myself, my ego, my personality, who I thought I was aside, is when life is like, ooh, I got such good stuff. Here you go. And so that's worth it. And the more you do it, the more you do it, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
well, and it becomes liberating and
liberating
so
and
juicy.
exciting.
And
it's
then
like,
you're like, how
what's
good
next?
can it get? Yes.
Yeah, I didn't think about undercurrent, my business. That wasn't it. So all of this conversation, meeting you,
so
all of, and it's all just around the corner when you allow it instead of trying to force, push, make, manufacture effort.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's so juicy.
Yeah.
This is why we just want that. Like, we've had a taste of it and we just want this for every human, every woman.
Absolutely.
Like now,
yes.
you know, the freedom, the liberation, I think for me, it was like, it's actually getting right with yourself. And what I mean by that is like, I actually like myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in this armor. I'm not in this ego. I'm not efforting to the point of like being disgusted with my own self.
Right.
Because
I haven't lived up.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
And it's like, it's sad that it takes us 40 years to get to that point, but it's never too late.
Well, and I'm constant. It's not like, oh, I've arrived and now it's like that all the time.
The journey is
it's
still
constant,
going.
But I love that discovery.
Yeah.
It's a constant discovery.
Yes.
Our new family favorite song is by Oliver Wood.
Okay.
And it's he says, yo, I surrender. I don't know anything. And I'm like, this is my mantra.
That's it.
I don't know anything, but yet I'm open to learning and discovering and seeing what's for me. And that has, it makes life
so juicy. Well, and that parallels your nothing that came to your mind.
That's it.
It's like no thing is like, I don't have to know it all. I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to arrive. I don't have to have the answers. I'm just here to experience this.
Yes.
And to witness it with curiosity and compassion.
And then it comes, whatever it is,
I know.
Because most of the time I can't even imagine the it's.
Right.
But they keep on coming. And so I'm here for it.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, you have to surrender to make this space.
That's it.
For what's for you.
Right. It's like an emptying out of inauthentic self.
Yes.
To receive and accept what's for your authentic self.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. I feel like we could have a 4-day conversation.
Okay, retreat time. Let's do it.
I was going to say, like, we can go through all the different parts. So if somebody is new to the Enneagram, like, what is a next step? What is a next step they could take to become familiar with this beautiful body?
Sure.
Of work?
There's a lot of ways. I've created a really short, it's about a 20-minute video that's just a brief introduction to the Enneagram.
Beautiful.
So I invite everyone, they can just DM me on Instagram, DM me freedom. And if they do that, then they can get that video. And it's just a great introduction. I also have like a little quiz. It is not an Enneagram quiz to know your Enneagram type.
Okay.
But it is a way to see what may be a good first step for them to enter into that. So that's on my website, undercurrent.life.
Okay. So we'll link the website and the Instagram in the show notes.
Perfect.
But I would say too, just having a curiosity, like an openness, and I deserve to know more about myself, or even just like setting in motion, like I'm going to learn more about myself, I feel like opens a lot of doors. And then when you go and you click on that and you take the quiz and you do, it's just like more and more, like it will find you. You just have to claim, I'm ready to learn more about myself.
When you're ready. And some people aren't.
And that's okay too. Totally.
But like if you're seeking that, this has got a wealth of information. Rizzo and Hudson are Enneagram masters who wrote The Wisdom of the Enneagram. They're like, they're amazing.
Okay.
But they have this quote, to love yourself enough to know yourself as you really are.
Ooh.
And I think about that a lot, that looking at yourself that deeply and honestly is an act of self-love. It is loving yourself to do that and to free yourself from what no longer serves you. That is an act of self-love. So I love that.
Oh, and what's possible for us when we come from that place of wholeness.
Yeah. Oh, it's
like we
beyond.
don't have blind spots. Like the more we know ourselves, the more integrated we are, the more whole we are,
That's it.
the more we become
That's it.
open for more and more good.
And the more we can receive other people for the wholeness of who they are. They don't
yeah.
have to be like us. We can
No.
accept them for who they are authentically.
Yeah.
It just, it's so symbiotic. Everything that happens within can also happen in relationship outwardly.
Oh, man.
Yes.
So good. Well, Calley, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been, I just love this conversation.
I know.
I love you. Thank you.
I love you too. And we'll probably have to have another conversation, but you guys definitely go follow her on Instagram. Check out her work. Like she's so knowledgeable. And I feel like this really is a beautiful tool to help women heal, become, and rise.
All of the above.
All of the above. All right. Well, thank you for
Thank
being
you so
here.
much.
And
Thanks.
to our beautiful listeners, we'll see you next week, same time and same place. Bye for now.
Hey, mama, if you made it to the end of this episode, I just want to virtually high five you because you've said yes to the opportunity of taking better care of yourself. And that is so meaningful and so amazing. You have no idea the ripple of goodness that's to come. If you've been enjoying the show, if you've been finding it helpful, if you've laughed a little or learned a new technique, will you do me a favor? Will you make sure that you're following the show, that you've given us a 5-star rating and left a review? That will absolutely help us get this podcast into more heads and hearts of as many mamas as possible. Because when we heal the mother, we heal the world. Also, if there's a specific episode that you've loved, will you make sure to share it with a friend? Just send them the link or share it on social media and make sure you tag me at Brooke Jean Unperfected because I absolutely love seeing that this is actually giving you the impact that you so desire and deserve. Thank you so much, mamas. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves and therefore each other.